Hello, this video will be filmed on photo booth because I am a bit lazy to set up my actual camera, and it's gonna be a chit chat type video, nothing fancy. I am stuck inside again this weekend because New York City weather just would not let me go out. I think there's like a cold blue today, meaning there's extreme cold. I think right now it's like -10, 14 degrees. The wind also looks very painful. So I'm stuck inside. And I think that is a good sign that I need to film my next video, aka this one, because I admittedly have been slacking. So here I am. I thought it would be cool to just do like a bookish reflection. Towards the end of January, I did attempt to kind of do a book reading wrap up. But for some reason I just didn't like what I filmed, so I deleted the footages. I'm gonna try it again. So we're gonna talk about 2025, then 2026, in that order. But for 2025, I feel pretty proud of myself. I did hit 100% of my book. That makes it 20 books total, though I did cram 4 of them in the last month and kind of cheated a little by reading very short books, like 90 pages. But still, they're books. I consider them books. Therefore, I completed my goal. Some of my most notable reads are Chain Gang All-Star by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. I believe it's this author's debut novel, which is extremely impressive. That book put me through such a rough roller coaster. It's like a dystopian sci-fi about the American prison industrial complex. Very pointed socio-political commentary, but from a perspective of just a book, it's also very action-packed with well-developed, nuanced characters. You will find yourself very shocked to empathize with so many morally gray, seemingly evil characters. That's kind of how I felt. Don't worry, there's no spoilers. I'm just going to talk about how I felt from a very subjective point of view. I also read a bit of translated literature as a part of my Reading Around the World challenge. This is a personal lifetime goal of mine to read one book, typically translated into English, from different countries. It started because I read Minor Detail by Adania Shibli from Palestine. That was a very unique and powerful experience. I would love to do more of that. I just feel like reading literature gives you like a different experience than just reading about other people, other places in a more like non-fictional way. Anyways, I'm digressing. But in terms of translated literature this year, I really enjoyed my pick for South Korea, which is Kim Ji-yeon, born 1982, by Chol Nam-ju. I think there's a movie adaptation of it with Gong Yoo. I picked it up because the backstory is a little crazy, but back when I was a K-pop stan, a lot of the idols I followed got hate for being photographed with this book. I don't know the social context of it, but I just know it's not very popular with the dudes in South Korea. So I ultimately chose this one over Hong Kong, though I would love to read Hong Kong sometime in the future. And then I also read Elena Knows by Claudia Pinedo. This is my pick for Argentina. It's a crime thriller told through the perspective of an elderly woman named Elena who has Parkinson's. and she's trying to find the truth behind the death of her daughter Rita, who was found hung at the bell tower of the church she attends. Again, the story itself is very solid. What I really liked about it is that additional layer of social commentary that the book provides. And then lastly is Winter in Sokcho by Elisa Chua Dusupin. This one is very short, very scenic, very appropriate for the winter because it's about winter in Sokcho, if it's not obvious by the title. I really enjoyed it. Pretty open-ended, but I'm a more character-driven, vibes-driven reader than actual plot. So if that's what you're into, I also recommend it. Overall, I think 2025 for me was very experimental. I read things from like crime nonfictions to short story collections to, again, translated literature. And that's something I would love to continue in 2026. I already have my picks for reading around the world kind of chosen already. I have Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina for Russia, Notes of a Crocodile by Qin Miaoqing from Taiwan. There's also this book called Money to Burn from Denmark. Sorry, I can't remember the author from the top of my head, but that's something I really want to read if I can find a copy. I think it's only available on Amazon, but I'm going to try and see if I could thrift it from like eBay or something. And then also very random, Houseboy. Again, I don't recall the author's name, but it's going to be my pick for Cameroon, contingent on if I can find the actual book. Aside from just naming books that I really enjoyed, I also want to do a quick reflection on kind of what worked for me and what didn't, habits. I decided to set myself goals again. For 2026, I'm going to bump it up to 24, which is probably the highest I've given myself. I think on average I would then need to read 2 per month, which isn't crazy or anything. I just have commitment issues. But I realize I don't like the idea of needing to read daily. One logging tracking app I use is Fable, and one of the features they offer is maintaining streaks, kind of like Snapchat. And last year I got really good at maintaining like an 80-day streak, and then one day I just tanked it by not reading, and that was part of the reason why I had like a pretty big reading gap in the summer. So I realized that daily reading was just too much for me. I'm gonna read when I feel like it, instead of viewing it as a chore. Otherwise it feels like academic reading back in school. Something else I want to do kind of less of is reading books I already have a negative expectation for. Like, for example, I don't have really good track records with 2 very hot book talk authors. One writes in the romance genre, the other one is in romantasy. I probably won't read them because I already kind of have this pre-existing bias in my mind towards their books. Something else is rom-com or contemporary rom-com. I probably won't read that this year. I also don't want to read any books where I find the premise boring. Because something I did this year was, even though I thought it was boring, maybe because everyone raves about the book, that I feel like I should also read it and be a little bit performative. So that's a big no for 2026. No more wasting my time on books that I already made up my mind about. I also want to figure out a journaling note-taking system, if it works for me at all. Something I tried to do at one point is keep like a commonplace journal where I would scribble down specific quotes that I find really impactful that lasted for a page and that was it. So I'm going to try again one more time. I don't know how, I'll figure it out. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Move on. And lastly, I want to do more immersive reading. Nowadays, I read mostly on a 30-minute interval to an hour, but I really miss days, especially back when I was a child, where I would read hours at end, like sit down for 3 straight hours and power through a good chunk of the book. I really miss that experience. It's going to be really hard to replicate to truly immerse yourself, but I'm going to maybe like book a chunk of my weekend just dedicated to reading. Now let's talk about 2026. So as I mentioned, I set myself a 24 book goal this year, broken out into sub-bullets. I also want to read one a month, so I don't cram everything towards the end. And then I want to hit 5 translated literature. I already mentioned Leo Tolstoy for Russia with Anna Karenina, and I'm going to probably pick up Notes of a Crocodile from Barnes & Nobles because I saw it the other day. I'm currently reading Wuthering Heights. Pretty good progress. I want to finish it by the 13th of February, 6 days away, so that I am ready to hate on the movie. JK. I'm going to try and keep a non-biased point of view for the movie, but based on the casting, on the press news, it's looking pretty dire. Something else I have on my plate is Jade War, the second book to the Green Bone Saga series. I read Jade City towards the end last year. Really enjoyed it. It's been a while since I've been this invested in a fantasy series, so I'm going to try and power through the trilogy this year. And then I have The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Murakami Haruki. That's kind of it for known titles in my 2026 TBR. Oh, and one more. There's a nonfiction that I'm trying to read slowly. It's Language City. I don't remember the author's name. But I think the premise of the book is about this author who follows 6 to 7 different communities here in New York City. Specifically communities where the language is kind of dying. I think one they're following is like Yiddish, Hebrew, Yiddish. So I'm really interested in that because I come from a family that speaks Fujonese. It is a Southern Chinese dialect that's not at the brink of extinction, but declining pretty rapidly because younger people do not speak it anymore. And it's very big here in New York City. If you go to East Broadway, if you go to Flushing, if you go to 8th Avenue in Brooklyn, there's a very big Fujonese diaspora, and I'm just really curious if it mentions this language in the book. So we'll see.